Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ricardo. Welcome, everybody, to this rather important session about powering Africa. It is in the last couple of days, we have talked a lot about our new series of studies linking climate and development together, and that you cannot look at climate and development in a separate way. And where is this most prominently is in the energy sector. Energy access is at the heart also of development. It provides the opportunities for economic growth, yet we have still challenges. Today, about 733 million people still lack electricity worldwide. 3/4 of them are living in Africa. And about close to 40–50% still have no access to electricity in Africa. And that means that all the potentials that the people normally would have are being denied to hundreds of millions of Africans. And you see it in the healthcare centers. In Africa, 2/3 are lacking access to electricity. We see that in sub-Saharan Africa, 30–40% of the food is lost because it cannot reach markets, partly also to the lack of irrigation, and that requires electricity. And so the overall losses are in some countries sometimes estimated in the order up to 4% of GDP. And that is simply not acceptable. Now progress is being made. About 30 million people every year are getting access to electricity in Africa. And that is the good news. The not so good news is that actually 80 million should have. So we actually need to triple our joint effort to make it happen. Now then you say that's a tall order. I would argue it can be done. We have seen that elsewhere in the world. I'm thinking of Vietnam, that went through a revolution and increased very rapidly energy access. The good news is it's also happening in Africa. And I'm thinking here of Rwanda, that in 15 years went from 6% electrification to 60%. And you also see very encouraging progress in the electrification in Kenya and Uganda. So how can we actually generalize that in the Africa? So we need to do more. And that means actually how can we get universal access to 2030? That's a hugely ambitious goal, but it can be there. I think what we have to think about is we can no longer think only of a little project here and there. We will need to have an Africa-wide effort in which basically piecemeal approaches are being replaced for a strategic approach to see how basically the overall governments, private sector, international organizations like the World Bank can actually work together and find solutions of grid and off-grid solutions. This is possible. It will require, of course, enormous political commitment, but I would argue that also the declarations by the African Union, but also during our negotiations for the latest IDA 20 round, were very encouraging. Last July, we had actually an implementation summit that was attended by 14 heads of state in Dakar, and that was hosted by President Macky Sall, and that touched also on the electricity challenge. And what you get a feeling is that there is a lot of political commitment to make it happen. So we need to build on that, and that means we need to see how we can mobilize. Now, everybody needs to do his or her share. And I think what we have seen is that if you are looking at the World Bank activities, we have currently a portfolio of about $8 billion. And once this is fully implemented, we believe that about 75 million people can get more access. So keep that in mind. I just mentioned we need to triple, so to get 80 million. So basically the World Bank project could maybe do 1 year. But we need to get actually to 550 million people to do it. So we need a lot more resources, including more resources from the World Bank. We have actually, the good news is that in the next 3 years, we would like to invest in Africa with IDA resources up to $65 billion. So it's an important strategic question for the governments. How much of these resources should be directed to energy access? We think there should be quite a bit of resources because it's important. Now, we need then to think not only within national boundaries, but also regionally. And that basically there is interconnectivity. I think there are a couple of very encouraging developments going on. That is particularly, for example, the West Africa power grid, a very good. East Africa is working, more needs to be, more deepening needs to be. And then also a very good development of off-grid solutions, small hydro, I'm thinking of the DRC. So what we need to see is we cannot think one size fits all. We will need to have different solutions be brought to the table. That requires, therefore, very clear policies from government, and that is what will create the certainty for the investments, for the public investments, but also realizing that the challenge is high. We need to work with the private sector. In the case of the World Bank Group, we have the IFC and MIGA involved in it. They are stepping up their engagement. And for example, just as an example where things are going, 2 days ago, the bank created this decentralized access with renewable energy scale-up, there's a platform, and that aims to double the path of energy access with decentralized renewable energies technology by 2026. And that could, again, benefit, we expect, up to 100 million people. We need all this kind of things, so we need to see how can we use the private sector, and if there are too many risks, we have created the private sector window to help de-risk these investments. And the IDA has available for that purpose up to $2.5 billion, and I think it would be great if that window could be extensively used for energy access purposes. So just to conclude, we feel actually bullish about this. I think it can be done. We see that countries are doing it. It will require not only a doubling, a tripling, maybe quadrupling of efforts. Where the World Bank is sitting, we are willing to quintuple our efforts on this. What I think is extremely important, that not in the next couple of years, we can all sit here together and say we did it. And the thing is that I believe that these are the type of things we can do. We can do it in a smart way, not because we are discussing here at the COP27 climate. That doesn't mean that energy access is exclusive, that we cannot do that. We need to combine it, we need to do it smart, and I think Africa has all the potential to succeed on this. What we would like to be part of a very ambitious agenda to make it happen, and hopefully we can indeed scale these investments as rapidly as possible so that indeed people finally get the access to energy they so desperately deserve. Thank you very much.